and it's a bloody masterpiece. It's so good, and it pulls no punches and has really, really strong, powerful moments. Just so good. I can't get over quite how good it was. So I'm catching up on Shannon over at Head in the Books, catching up on her latest vlog, and she's talking about NaNoWriMo. And like, obviously, if you've watched my last vlog, you'll know that I am trying to take part in NaNoWriMo myself. We've got fairly similar goals, the two of us, in that we're using it more to kind of try and get ourselves into the habit of writing than like necessarily creating a first draft of 50,000 words in the month. Like, I'd like to be able to hit the 50,000 word mark, but I'm not bothered about it being like a whole draft. Like, I just want to be able to say that I've written every day and that I have hit 50,000 words. But like, the second one's kind of like a secondary goal. But yeah, I'm feeling mixed things. So at the moment I'm at a little over 17,000 words, but that's between like all the different documents that I'm writing. But still, 17,000 words for the 8th day of NaNoWriMo I think is pretty decent. I was trying to write this story chronologically, but I got stuck trying to figure out like how the characters got from one place to another, and I just found that like I wasn't moving forward at all. So I kind of skipped forward in the book to a flashback scene where these two characters meet for the first time, and I just ended up writing and writing because I love their stories so much. And honestly, I think I could probably write a whole book just on their story. Like, I'm trying to focus on this initial idea that I've had and like write that to completion, or write it until the point where it doesn't work anymore. Because I think part of what I want to achieve this NaNoWriMo is to have an idea and stick with it. Like, that's not what I set out to do. I set out to just try and write every day and to, you know, achieve 50,000 words over the course of the month. But then, you know, I came up with this idea, I think it was on like the second day, or like I fleshed it out enough that it felt like it could be an idea. So I want to actually try and turn it into something. And if it goes no further than just being an achievement that I've done myself, I've managed to write a complete story, then that'll be enough for me. But I'm still pretty excited by this story. I just need to actually stick with it and make it as good as I can. Just kind of jumping in here because I read Verity all the way back in June, I think. And I didn't realise that people are like either team manuscript or team letter. And the fact that there's like 2 interpretations for the story, it's kind of blown my mind a bit. And now I'm like, oh, I think I'm team letter. And I never even thought that people would read it differently. And I'm like, down the rabbit hole I go, see what people think, and if there is an official stance that the author's taken. Because I'm feeling like there's quite a few books I want to read at once, and also, like, obviously I've got NaNoWriMo this month. I've decided to kind of gamify my reading this evening. So I've assigned a book or NaNoWriMo to like numbers 1 to 6, and I'm rolling a dice to pick which one I do, and then I'm also rolling 2 dice, very much like Becca does when she does dice sprints, to decide how long I do it for. So the first one that I've done, I will pop a clip in, but basically it landed on me having to read one of the Tea Dragon books, which I started last night, so I'm just going to kind of read the 3 that are available. And I can't remember how much. I think the 2 dice. I think the 2 dice, the combined total was 5, which means that I've got to read that for 35 minutes. And I'm kind of looking forward to it. The Tea Dragon books are just so cute.
Gathered by the sea, sand people anxiously. Not once did speak to me. When tides came, did not flee.
It's nearly 8 a.m. now, which means I need to start thinking about winding down for sleep. I've had a lot of fun letting dice control my reading this evening, and I think it's actually helped me kind of keep on track, because I've been focusing for chunks of time, and with me not knowing what I'll next get to focus on, I've really been making the most of each chunk of time. So I think this is something I want to do more of in the future. I know I said that I wanted to bring back my dice control, my reading for a week at some point, and I still want to do that. I mean, with my mental health being what it is at the moment, I can't guarantee when that'll happen, but I think it'd be really interesting to do it at some point in the future. I guess we'll see. But right now I've got 40 minutes of Iron Widow to read, and I'm really looking forward to it, because I'm loving it. I'm about 30 pages in, and it's such a deeply feminist novel, but also I'm loving how rich the culture is, and also the fact that I think it was page 15 when they first started talking about gender being a really weird concept and stuff, which I love. And yeah, I'm just generally really, really enjoying it and looking forward to seeing where it goes next. It's definitely living up to the hype so far.
Don't feel anxious, don't feel shame. If there's a question, it can't wait another day. Don't feel like it's all in vain. I try to remember, it ain't a race. Breathe out.
I need to head to bed now, but I just want to convey how mad I am at myself. I said last week that I thought Iron Widow would be the kind of book that I would just want to binge and read in one go, and now I'm 50 pages in, and that's exactly what I want to do. Except, because I've got work tonight, I need to sleep today, and then obviously I'll have work, so I won't be able to read it at work either. So I think it's going to be one of those weeks where I'm just going to be squeezing in time to read it, like every moment that I can. And I don't know, maybe I'll get it finished in a couple of days, but also it's like 300, 400 pages long, so it's probably going to take me a good chunk of time to actually finish it. Hopefully I still get some sleep this week. So I've been reading Iron Widow this week. It's now, what day is it? Thursday, I think. And I started it like the early hours of Tuesday, and I'm like maybe halfway through. I'm just loving it so much. Like, I've been listening to a few different audiobooks this week, so I do need to update on that. But right now I'm just like, I'm loving Iron Widow so freaking much. Like, it's so smart, and like the way that like all the characters are interacting and the relationships is amazing. It's such a clever world. The way that it's critical of like traditional gender roles, it's just so damn good. And I am absolutely adoring it. It's everything I hoped it would be. And it's definitely living up to being one of my most anticipated releases of 2021, and I'm so happy. So I still need to update on the audiobooks I've been reading this week, but I just wanted to kind of pop in to update on Iron Widow. So I'm around the 270 page mark, and I'm absolutely adoring it. And actually, I'm feeling like it's possibly going to be my top book of this year. Obviously, it depends on where the story goes in the last like 100 and 150 pages. I actually don't know how long the book is. But I'm feeling the same way I felt when I read A Little Life, in that I already can't wait to reread it and annotate it because I'm just loving it so much. There's so much that's really powerful about this book, and like it's unashamedly what it is, and it's so immersive and so empowering and feminist. Words can't quite describe my love for this book. Like, I think the romance could have played a larger part. Like, I don't think there's much like explicit romance so far, but then like a lot could change in the rest of the book as well, because it being a love triangle does make it a little bit complicated. But I'm not mad. Like, I'm really loving what's happened so far in the story, and I feel like there's good hints of what's to come as well. So definitely thoroughly recommend it. Definitely think it's going to be like one of my top 5 books of the year, which I feel like is quite an achievement considering how many books I've managed to blast through this year. I also think like focusing on reading this book this week has been a good move, because it's left me feeling a lot more inspired to write. Like, I haven't written anything for the last couple of days, but I feel like it's put me in a better headspace to be able to actually think through the story that is in my head and figure out how to get it onto the page. And my plan is this weekend to just try and write a fair bit, but also I think I want to try and read The Nature of Witches this weekend, maybe. Well, I finished Iron Widow on my way home this morning, and it's a bloody masterpiece. It's so good, and it pulls no punches and has really, really strong, powerful moments. I think there might be a sequel in the works, but it was intended as a standalone. So the ending's kind of open, but also so good. It's very reminiscent of a famous movie. And like really good. Like, there was foreshadowing kind of building up to that, but I thought it was going to take an approach similar to another book I've read this year, which doesn't tell you much, but also like I would spoil both the books if I said I'd spoil both the books if I said like what direction I thought it was going to go in. But yeah, so good. I'm interested to see, like, assuming there is a sequel, like what happens in the world, but really, really incredible and lots of things I never could have guessed. And it's 100% like a 5-star read for me. And like, I loved it so much that in my little notes app on my phone, I said that I rated it 5, but it was like 5 with an exclamation mark. Just so good. I can't get over quite how good it was. I feel like this weekend's been a really weird one. I felt really like unsettled, like I can't decide on what I want to do. And I think it's because I've had a massive book hangover after reading Iron Widow. Like, I've tried to pick up another book, but I just haven't felt like I could get sucked in. Which is really rare for me actually. But I guess it just shows like how much I loved Iron Widow. I think I'm going to try and write for a bit now because I haven't really been writing this week, so I think it'll probably be good to try and pick that up and see if I can do some of that. And then I'll probably like check back in a little bit later and tell you where I'm at with my writing for the week, and also update you on the audiobooks that I've been listening to.
I get my hopes up every time, and I don't wanna be let down each road to find. I just wish I'd seen the price tag for my heart breaking. Was it worth all that waiting when I always knew just how I felt? Yeah, I'm looking back at the past and I feel regret. Don't wanna walk on the block, see where we met. Try to forget that you went on with someone else instead. Maybe it's better if I never love, so I don't have to open up, and you don't have to lose my trust every time. Why am I always getting so attached when I know that we're gonna crash? Now I wish I could turn you back into someone I never had. You were different from the rest, 'cause you didn't hide imperfections from the edge, yeah. Bet you don't even love you half as much as I want to.
So it's been about a week since I meant to wrap up this video, but I'm just a complete chaotic mess. Also, like, my shower has been broken for about 3 months, which means that I've got to try and coordinate with B to get my hair washed. And I've just generally been feeling gross in myself. So anyway, it's been about a week, but obviously I need to wrap up this video. So I got to about 23,000 words for NaNoWriMo, and I haven't written anything since then, I don't think. But also, since then, the Goodreads Choice Awards for 2021 have been announced, or rather, the nominations have been. And it's been something I've wanted to do for a while, to try and read as many from a category so I can make a truly informed decision. And now that I'm on BookTube, it's a video idea people do and stuff, so I wanted to get in on it, so that's what I'm gonna do. But because there's essentially 3 weeks, I'm not sure if it's exactly 3 weeks or if it's a little different, but there's basically 3 weeks from the top 20 being announced to voting closing. It closes on the 9th, closes on the 5th, but isn't announced until the 9th. And there's 2 weeks between top 20 and it getting narrowed down to top 10, from my understanding. If I've got any of this wrong, I'm sorry. I did try and research it, but it seems they've changed things around this year, so maybe it'll be a bit different. But anyway, it's quite a quick turnaround. So I've decided that I'm basically giving up on Nano. I'm not gonna stop writing, but I think there's a certain psychology to saying if I'm going to say I've given up, I take the pressure off myself. So if I feel inspired to write, I can still write, but I'm not feeling like I'm balancing too many. What is the turn of phrase? I'm not feeling like I've got too many plates spinning at once. So I'll write if I want to, but really my focus for essentially the next 3 weeks is going to be trying to read as many of these 20 books as possible. So that's that. In terms of what books I read during the course of the period that this vlog took place, I basically read or listened to all of the Wicked Villains audiobooks by Katie Robert. They are they're basically the perfect book for a queer person because, as the name might suggest, the love interest in these books is the villain. So you grow up, you're familiar with Disney characters and whatnot, and obviously, well, I say obviously, a lot of Disney villains are queer coded, so it makes sense that queer people end up looking up to the villain. I mean, there's a whole other more complex psychology to why the villains are often more attractive than the true love interest. But basically these are a series of books where you're following it. It tends to be the hero of the Disney movies, and I should probably say I'm pretty sure they're in no way affiliated with Disney. They're not on brand for Disney at all. But these characters are what you'd recognise from Disney films, except their love interest is the villain. So for example, the first book is Desperate Measures, and it's following Princess Jasmine, and her love interest is Jafar, and the villain of the story is actually Ali. And then your second one is a triad with Megara, Hercules and Hades, and it's that kind of thing. They're all set, so they are contemporary, they're not fantasy at all. Well, in the magical way, obviously they're not set in the real world, these are not real people. So in that way they are fantasy. But they're set in a place called Carver City, and it's basically like all of these like villains are kind of like mob bosses. They run different territories inside Carver City, and Hades runs like a kink club basically. I think that's the best way of describing it. Like, it's neutral territory for all these mob bosses to go and socialise, but a lot of time they end up having sex with one another. So it's this whole thing, and each of the books are quite spicy. Like, I haven't read enough smart to know where they really land on the spice scale, but I would say Desperate Measures is less spicy than the new Camelot series, but the rest of them are kind of on a par. So they were good. I think the lowest they gave some of them was 3.5. I think the highest was 4 or 4.5. So they're like a little better than average. They are like, if you're looking for smart, like Desperate Measures, I thought wasn't like, it was smutty, but it wasn't as smutty as I expected it to be. But also it's kind of important for establishing the world. And that's all those books. And then other audiobooks I listened to I remember that week, I think I listened to like one like average-ish book, one book I really didn't like. Well, I say really didn't like, I think it was a 3 or a 2 or something. One book I didn't like and one that I really did. So let's bring it up. Okay, so I listened to I Am Dust. I can't remember the authors of any of these books, but I will put images on screen. Louise Beach, maybe, actually. Yeah, I listened to I Am Dust, and it was a 3.25 overall. And it's kind of like, it's queer, which I don't know if I knew when I originally picked it, but yeah, it's queer. It's set in a theatre, like, and they're reviving a play that 20 years ago the lead actress was murdered, which like abruptly shut down the play. So there's all this like superstition. The murder of the lead actress remains unsolved, and then it's like, it's slightly ghosty. The reason that I didn't particularly like it was that it featured a lot of queer pain. It also was very like in your face about the self-harm aspects. Now, I wouldn't say that self-harm is particularly a trigger for me, but it is quite explicit in the self-harm, and not necessarily in the actual descriptions of the self-harm, but also the psychology behind harming. This may not be a great way to describe it, but I thought that the discussion of self-harm in some places was on a par with A Little Life. So if you read A Little Life and are familiar with self-harm scenes, it's a little bit like that. So yeah, like, not a terrible book, but not my favourite. And then I listened to The Lake, and I don't know, I have no idea why it was blurbed this way, but it was like the uncontested queen of YA thrillers, which, I mean, obvious, in my opinion, like, this author's very much not. As much as I haven't enjoyed the one Karen M. McManus book that I've read, I would say that she's more the queen of it. But then also you've got the likes of Holly Jackson, who wrote the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, and they are exceptional. And I was talking to Shannon over at Head in the Books, obviously always linked in the description, and she was even suggesting that you could argue that Tiffany D. Jackson is the queen of YA thriller. So basically, very strange way to blurb this book. And it takes place at a summer camp, and you've got these people that are like trainee counsellors, and like they did something bad back when they actually attended the camp, and then like it's like they're being stalked. The only way that I can really talk about the lake is to get into spoilers, so spoiler warning for the lake. And it had a little bit of a feel of unreliable narrator, and it did this thing where very early on it said, this is the person that's doing it. And, you know, being someone that does like thrillers, I would say that I read a lot more broadly than I did a few years ago, but I still really enjoy thrillers. I expect a bit more mystery in my thrillers. So to very early on tell me that this is the person that's doing it, I do not expect it to be the person that's doing it. You expect there to be a bit of questioning. You expect, you know, it not to be as clear as your main character saying this is the person that's doing it, and then they are the person that's doing it. And, you know, if it really has to go that way, then you expect that the accomplice is maybe a mystery. So you had this character that was terrorizing these people at the camp, that the protagonist was like, oh, it's this person. And it felt like wild speculation, so it didn't feel like it would be too far off the base if it was something completely unrelated. But not only had the protag said it was this person, but they'd also said, and this is the person that's helping them. And that's where you could really add some like questioning into it, because it's like, okay, so if it's this person, this accomplice that they think is the accomplice isn't. But turns out it was. So basically you knew who the person terrorizing them was, like at the start, and then you also knew, like, not the start, sorry, but you knew very early on who the person terrorizing them was, and you also knew who the accomplice was. So you're like, okay, so how is this a thriller? Which obviously you can have a thriller whilst also like knowing who's doing it, but it just makes it that much harder to actually make it thrilling. And then so there's that, which I really did not enjoy. And then you also had this thing where, like, right at the end, it turns out this person has set it all up so that the protagonist takes the fall for murdering like 4 people or something ridiculous like that. Which, all well and good, like, and then it just like ends just as the police shows up. Which you think, oh, that sounds okay. That sounds, you know, okay, potentially. Except for the fact that... words. Except for the fact that it stretches the length of believability that this person that's been stalking them and terrorizing them could actually have known everything would go down exactly the way that it did. So that was the lake. And then the final audiobook that I listened to before I listened to all of the Wicked Villains. Oh no, sorry, there was 2. Apparently I can't count my audiobooks. So there was The Cat Who Saved Books, which I really loved. It was a 5-star read, and it's basically exactly what it says on the tin. It's a cat who helps save books. And it's a love story to books, and also it deals with grief, and I just really, really enjoyed what it did. And really, like, it's quite a short book, and I do thoroughly recommend it. And then the final book, because I miscalculated or misremembered, was The Pull of Stars. Now this book takes place over the course of 3 days in 1918 Dublin, and it's all centred around a maternity ward at the hospital that's also dealing with patients with influenza. And it was just so well written. I really enjoyed the story that I was telling. And despite the fact that it took place over 3 days and it was like not a short read or listen, it still felt really engaging and just it carried me along. Also, it was queer, which love. So overall that was a 4.25, and I realised that for the books that I loved, I haven't given very good descriptions. I'm sorry for that. Also, like, I read them almost 2 weeks ago. But yeah, this has been a really long wrap up to this video. It's potentially longer than the video itself, which I am sorry. Let me know in the comments down below if you are if you've read any of these books. I'm also really interested to hear your predictions for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and watch this space because I do plan on doing 2 videos. I'm going to do one where I do kind of predictions. I'm going to do like a deep dive into my predictions for the category that I'm reading, but I will also do a lightning round of predictions for other categories. And I'm also going to do a vlog of me reading the other, me trying to read the 20 books in a single category. So until next time, bye!